be in the Hall of Fame. First came June. I was inducted into the International Hall.
James Toney, one of boxing's most gifted defensive fighters, has never been shy about giving his opinion. Known for his slick shoulder roll, vicious counterpunching, and iron chin, Toney faced some of the greatest fighters of multiple eras. And at 57, he finally sat down and revealed his 10 favorite boxers of all time. Not the most popular choices, but the fighters he personally admired, studied, or drew inspiration from. This list reflects the fighters who shaped Toney's mentality, skill set, and competitive fire. 10. Michael Nunn James. Toney's admiration for Michael Nunn goes far beyond their legendary 1991 fight. Before Toney shocked the world by knocking him out, Nunn was widely viewed as one of the most talented boxers alive. He had the height, reach, southpaw stance, and silky smooth movement that made opponents look ordinary. Toney always respected that Nunn wasn't just a champion, he was a puzzle. Toney said he learned more preparing for Nunn than almost any other opponent in his career. He admired Nunn's ability to glide around the ring, using timing and angles instead of brute force. Even after defeating him, Toney repeatedly praised Nunn's boxing IQ and natural gifts. Their rivalry became a turning point for both men, but Toney never downplayed Nunn's greatness. He often said that without facing someone as skilled and confident as Nunn, he would never have become the fighter the world eventually came to know. 9. Evander Holyfield. James Toney respected Evander Holyfield for reasons that went far beyond their fight. Holyfield was the model of heart, grit, and warrior spirit, qualities Toney believed defined a real fighter. Toney admired Holyfield's ability to compete with giants in the heavyweight division, despite coming up from cruiserweight. He saw Holyfield as someone who embraced challenges without fear, always choosing the hardest road. Even after Toney convincingly beat him in 2003, he continued praising Holyfield's legacy. He admired the way Holyfield fought rematches, trilogies, and wars that would have broken weaker men. Toney often said that Holyfield possessed something rare, the mentality to rise in weight, fight everyone available, and keep pushing even when injured or counted out. To him, Holyfield embodied old-school toughness and represented everything fighters should aspire to: courage, endurance, and the refusal to quit under any circumstance. 8. Bernard Hopkins. James Toney had deep respect for Bernard Hopkins because the two shared similar philosophies: outsmart opponents, outlast opponents, and never rely purely on athleticism. Toney admired Hopkins for fighting well into his late 40s, something few boxers in history managed to do. He appreciated how Hopkins used craftiness instead of flash, technique instead of brute strength. Toney often said Hopkins was a real fighter, someone who took risks, stayed disciplined, and never pretended to be something he wasn't. He admired Hopkins' ability to adapt to different styles, break opponents mentally, and stay composed even against younger, stronger, faster fighters. Toney loved fighters who mastered the little details: foot placement, timing, leverage, and distance control. Hopkins was a master of these things, and Toney considered him a blueprint for longevity. More than anything, he respected Hopkins for fighting the best, decade after decade, without fear or excuses. 7. Marvin Hagler. James Toney has always said that Marvin Hagler was the definition of a complete fighter. He admired everything about Hagler: the southpaw switch hitting, the granite chin, the endless stamina, and the ruthless intensity. Hagler was old school, blue collar, and never asked for special treatment, qualities Toney respected deeply. He often mentioned how Hagler came up the hard way, fighting dangerous contenders without fanfare or huge paydays. That toughness inspired Toney. Hagler's ability to adapt during fights also impressed him. Whether boxing from the outside or brawling on the inside, Hagler controlled every inch of the ring. Toney also loved Hagler's discipline. He trained with a seriousness and hunger that never faded. To Toney, Hagler wasn't just a champion, he was a symbol of everything boxing used to be. Hagler represented grit, heart, skill, and an unbreakable will. And Toney admired him until the end. 6. Tommy Hearns. Tommy Hearns was one of Toney's childhood heroes. The hitman had devastating power, lightning speed, and the courage to face any fighter, no matter the size or reputation. Toney admired that Hearns never avoided challenges. He chased them. He fought legends across multiple weight classes, from welterweight to light heavyweight, and delivered unforgettable wars that shaped boxing history. Toney especially appreciated Hearns' willingness to take risks. Hearns fought in a way that thrilled fans but also demonstrated exceptional skill. Sharp jabs, blistering combinations, and a right hand that could end a fight instantly. Toney felt Hearns' mindset was pure warrior spirit. Attack first, keep moving forward, and give the audience everything you have. He believed Hearns represented fearless ambition and admired him for his courage and explosiveness. To Toney, Hearns was living proof that greatness comes from daring to be bold. 5. Pernell Whitaker. Toney admired Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker because he represented boxing at its purest form. Whitaker didn't rely on power or intimidation. He relied on skill, precision, and flawless defensive instincts. Toney respected how Whitaker could make elite fighters miss by inches, using subtle movements that only the most trained eyes could appreciate. Both men shared a love for slick defensive work, and Toney often praised Whitaker as one of the greatest technicians in boxing history. He admired Whitaker's confidence, poise, and ability to frustrate even the strongest punchers. To Toney, Whitaker showed what boxing was really about: thinking, timing, positioning, and intelligence. Whitaker didn't need knockouts to prove dominance. His mastery was enough. Toney always said that anyone who understood boxing knew Whitaker was special. 4. Roy Jones Jr. Even though Roy Jones Jr. defeated James Toney in 1994, Toney always held tremendous respect for him. He admired Roy's supernatural athleticism, the speed, the reflexes, the creativity that no other fighter possessed. Toney respected that Roy took the fight when others hesitated. It was champion versus champion at their peak. Toney admired Jones for dominating multiple divisions and making great fighters look ordinary. He often said Jones was one of the most gifted fighters to ever live. Despite their rivalry, Toney acknowledged that Roy changed boxing with his unique, unpredictable style. He respected Jones's willingness to challenge himself, jump weight classes, and take risks few men would ever dare. Their fight became one of the most important nights of Toney's career, shaping both fighters' legacies. Over time, admiration replaced rivalry, and Toney openly praised Roy as a once-in-a-generation talent. 3. Ezzard Charles. James Toney often spoke about Ezzard Charles with deep admiration. To him, Charles was the greatest pure technician in heavyweight history. Toney loved how Charles blended defense and offense seamlessly, turning every exchange into a chess match. He studied Charles's fights religiously, learning how Charles slipped punches, countered with precision, and used footwork to control opponents. Toney admired how Charles fought everyone: Marciano, Walcott, Louis, and never backed down. He believed Charles was underappreciated by casual fans, but revered by real students of boxing. Charles' intelligence, discipline, and consistency inspired Toney's own style. He saw Charles as the fighter every young boxer should study if they want to learn what true skill looks like. For Toney, Charles wasn't just great, he was brilliant. 2. Jack Johnson. The defensive genius and ring generalship of Jack Johnson fascinated Toney. He admired Johnson's ability to mentally break opponents, control distance, and fight with extreme confidence. Toney often praised Johnson for being the original defensive master, the blueprint for fighters like himself. Johnson's ability to win with his mind, not just his fists, made him one of Toney's all-time favorites. 1. Joe Frazier. Toney's #1 favorite was Joe Frazier, a fighter he idolized for his relentless pressure, heart, and refusal to quit. Toney loved warriors, and Frazier represented the purest form of fighting courage. Toney admired Frazier's willingness to walk through fire to land his left hook, his conditioning, and his fearlessness even against giants like Muhammad Ali. To Toney, Frazier was the toughest fighter who ever lived, and the embodiment of what a real fighter should be. James Toney's list reflects what he values most: skill, heart, bravery, technique, and pure fighting spirit. Whether it was the defensive genius of Jack Johnson, the slickness of Whitaker, or the undeniable toughness of Joe Frazier, Each of these fighters shaped the man James Toney became.